The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order by Samuel P. Huntington was written in 1996. In fundamental ways, the world is becoming more modern and less Western. Civilizations are the ultimate human tribes, and the clash of civilization is tribal conflict on a global scale. The dangerous clashes of the future are likely to arise from the interaction of Western arrogance, Islamic intolerance. The major sources of conflict in the 21st century will be cultural and religious, not economic. In 1993, America and the West were still digesting the fact that it had won the Cold War, with the Berlin Wall crumbling less than 4 years before. Liberal democracy and Western values seemed victorious. Huntington had more uncomfortable things to say. The West was declining in influence, and that of Asian civilization was expanding, while Islam was undergoing a demographic explosion that would destabilize Muslim countries and their neighbors. The six powers that will dominate the 21st century, America, China, Europe, Japan, Russia, and India, belong to 5 different civilizations, and there are several Islamic states whose big populations, resource wealth, and strategic importance will make them influential. Africa's relative poverty and disunity will prevent it from being a major player in our time. The most significant conflicts, Huntington says, will not be between classes of rich or poor, but between people identifying themselves as part of different civilization. The principal dividing line in the world was one of the Iron Curtain. Huntington says, today it is the line separating Europe and the West from Orthodox and Muslim countries. Huntington's view is almost the opposite of that put forward by Fukuyama, which posits that ideological battles are being replaced by liberal democracy. When the Cold War finished, the West thought it had won the argument over the best form of government, liberal democracy combined with free market. But what is universalism to the West is imperialism to the rest. The author argues that the West victory in the Cold War produced not Trump but exhaustion. Western states are now beset with their own problem, including slower economic growth, stagnating population, big government debts, and low saving rate at exactly the same time as economic power is rapidly heading to Asia. While the West military power will continue to dominate, the trend is for rising military expenditure by China, Russia, and India compared to the traditional big spender. As non-Western countries become richer and more powerful, they will have need to adopt or even admire Western institution values and ideas. The great story of our time has been Asia's, particularly China's, economic rise. As Singapore First Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew said, it is not possible to pretend that this is just another big player. This is the biggest player in the history of man. Authors suggest that the greatest potential flashpoint in Asia will be if America challenges China's attempt to dominate in this part of the world. Huntington sees China becoming the hegemon of Asia, and all, including Japan, eventually bowing to it instead of America. Western politicians like to say that the West does not have an issue with Islam, only Islamist extremism. But they are not telling the truth. Right, Huntington. The conflict between liberal democracy and Marxism in the 20th century was a mere blip in a much longer and deeper animosity between Christianity and Islam. There is a fundamental divide between the Western ideas of separation of religion and state and the Islamic idea that everything, including government, must be ordered in the name of Allah. The few Muslim states that remain friends with the West are those who depend on its military, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and even those who have been supported by it economically, like Egypt. Yet looking on the bright side, Huntington notes that the Muslim demographic boom will not last forever, and if it occurs alongside economic development, then the source of instability may wane. Here are some of the criticism on the book The Clash of Civilization and Remaking of the World Order. Number 1 is dividing the globe into civilization is too simplistic, as the world is more complex than that. The deep splits within the Muslim world, example Sunni versus Shiites, preclude a single Muslim identity, so the idea of Islam versus the West is too simple. In the book Trust, Fukuyama argues that rather than causing conflict, civilization rubbing up against each other produces cross-stimulation and creative change. Another criticism is Huntington realpolitics right-wing analysis provide an intellectual basis for the misguided Bush-Blair invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. World trade did not bring about world peace, but simply provides more opportunities for clashes between competing value systems. Author's first rule for living in a multi-civilizational world is that the core state of each civilization respects the domain of the others and do not engage in fault-line wars by proxy.